This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Ash, and Team Valor. We resume with Team Tennyson mid-caper as we find Gwen, Kevin, and Max tied up and hung upside down over a vat of chemicals. All to the side, Dr. Animo monologues about his DNA bomb and how it will force a new age of evolution on the planet. However, before the doc can finish his rant, a new voice butts in, that of Ben, as he declares that not if he has any say in the matter, though surprisingly he is not himself or any of the aliens the gang know, instead being a humanoid creature with green eyes all over its body aside from its face, which is largely taken up by a set of big bad ears. Furiously, Animo curses Ben for always ruining his plans, while commanding his newest pet, a giant mutant hornet, to destroy him. Showing off its near 360-degree vision, this new eye guy is easily able to roll out of the way of the hornet's stinger, but this is not all he can do, as with a grunt, he fires a large green laser from his central chest eye, forcing the bug to retreat and giving Ben the advantage. This is all well and good, though as Kevin testily reminds his pal, the rest of them are still tied up and hanging over mystery goo, so it'd be really neat if you could take a break from being a bug zapper to cut them down. Smirking that Kevin's starting to sound like Gwen, Ben fires a blast that breaks their chains, allowing Max to pull out a grappling hook and swing the kids to safety, while Ben returns to his fight, now with the rest of the family on his side. Thanks to this and their better teamwork than in canon, it is child's play for Gwen, Kevin, and Max to take down Animo, while Ben focuses on the literal ticking time bomb. Unfortunately, as the Quack Doctor is all too happy to point out, Ben will never crack through his bomb's casing in time to defuse it, with Ben retorting that if he can't turn it off, he'll just have to overload it. Worriedly, Gwen comments that Ben doesn't know what'll happen if he does that, though flatly, he replies that it can't be any worse than what'll happen if he doesn't, before firing a laser into it. At once, the bomb begins to short out from all this excess energy, displaying an error message, and seemingly stopping its countdown. Though unluckily for Ben, it does still have a small discharge, with a wave of radiation washing over him while Gwen, Max, and Kevin make it to cover due to being farther away. In the aftermath of this, there is silence, broken only by Max as he calls out to his grandson, with Gwen and Kevin doing likewise a moment later. When they receive no answer, the old man pokes his head out over the top of his cover to see an alive and dazed Ben, who has reverted to human form. Rushing up to him, the old man then pulls Ben into a hug, smiling that he's glad he's alright, while Kevin punches him playfully on the shoulder, stating he did good, and Gwen taunts that he's lucky he was an alien, otherwise that DNA wave would have scrambled him. Speaking of aliens, when Ben looks down at the Omnitrix, he finds it crackling with orange electricity, while the dial itself is orange instead of red. However, this is almost immediately accompanied with an extra speedy recharge, so surely it can't be a bad thing, a sentiment Kevin echoes, suggesting maybe it's some sort of upgrade for unlocking a bunch of aliens, since it turned a yellowish color when he scanned the mummy. Grinning eagerly, Ben declares that now he's got to go test it out, though before he and Kevin can run off, Max gently puts a hand on each of their shoulders, reminding them that before they got sidetracked with Animo, they promised to let Gwen pick today's activity, and she chose the mall. Letting out a groan, Ben calls this no fair, though in a placating tone, the old man simply replies that the Omnitrix will still be here tomorrow, so he can try out the new feature then. Seeing he has no choice, Ben sulkily accepts this outcome, complaining to Kevin all the way there that he can't believe he has to give up a day of his summer vacation for boring old shopping. Though as he will soon learn, this spree is anything but boring, since while messing around in a clothing store as preteen boys are wont to do, Ben and Kevin notice that same orange electricity from before, and so lean in to take a closer look. However, this is exactly the wrong thing to do, as instead of dissipating, the sparks turn to a bubble of energy which expands outwards before bursting, and sending both Ben and Kevin flying into separate displays of clothes. Unsurprisingly, this annoys the store manager, who had already clocked the boys as troublemakers, though earning the ire of a shopkeeper is hardly the worst thing to happen to them today, especially not to Kevin, as when he emerges from the pile of clothes he was under, he is met by a shocked look from Ben and a scream of pure terror from the manager. Worriedly, the young Osmosian asks what's wrong. Though unable to speak, Ben simply points to a nearby floor-length mirror, and as Kevin rushes over to inspect the damage, he finds that his skin has become a pastiche of materials, with him now having wooden legs, a metal right arm, a left side made of stone which covers most of his face, and finally a chunk of tadenite to make up the rest. Understandably, Kevin is horrified by this discovery, muttering to himself that he's a monster, though before Ben can say anything to the contrary, the elder boy has already run off, with Ben hastily gathering Gwen and Grandpa Max go after him. Heading back to the rust bucket, the three Tennysons find that Kevin is not there, and so search around, figuring he couldn't have gone far. Ultimately, they find him in a nearby park, hunched over the bank of a lake, staring despondently down at his own reflection. As the adult of the group, Max takes the lead here, sitting beside Kevin and placing an arm around his shoulder in a comforting gesture that means the world to the boy, as he asks what happened. Tersely, Kevin replies that he got turned into a freak. That's what happened. Though recognizing Max is only trying to help, he begins recounting his experience in the clothing store. It is only now that Ben remembers the Omnitrix's discharge, having been so wrapped up in helping his best friend, with him approaching at Max's signal and showing him the watch. Looking over it carefully, the old man comments that he suspects it has something to do with this orange band that is formed around the edge of the display, which in turn is likely connected to Animo's DNA bomb, though that is something they can investigate in the morning, as it's getting dark, so they should probably head over to the campground and settle in for the night. This is sound advice, as morning comes for the Tennysons far sooner than expected, as at 3:30 the next morning, the rust bucket is flooded with light, forcing Ben, Gwen, Max and Kevin from their beds as they step out into the campground and realize they're in the center of a massive searchlight. Looking up at the source, they find it is a spaceship, which lands in front of them, and as its inhabitant steps outside, Ben's face splits into a wide grin as he cries out in greeting for Tetrax. Nodding stoically, Tetrax greets the Tennysons familiarly, and feeling left out, not to mention tired, and still very upset about his mutation, Kevin rudely demands to know who this guy is, while scowling at him. Respectfully, the Petrosapien bounty hunter apologizes, introducing himself and stating that he is an old ally of the group's who has come in response to the Omnitrix's SDM signal. Gulping, Max concludes that by SDM, he means self-destruct mode, with Tetrax nodding gravely, while in a suddenly panicked voice, Ben asks if the watch is really gonna blow. Allowing a look of sorrow to cover his rocky exterior, Tetrax confirms this too, adding the wearer will also be destroyed, though there is still hope, as if he and Ben can track down the creator Azimuth, they can get him to disable the Omnitrix, stopping the countdown. At once, Ben's fear turns to excitement, as he cheers that he's going on a space road trip. While still testy, Kevin butts in, saying that he's going too, since if this creator's smart enough to fix the watch, he's smart enough to fix his face, since he doesn't want to be a freak forever. On a closer inspection, Tetrax realizes that this is a mutation caused by the Omnitrix discharging, and so agrees, though refuses to allow Max to come, since he's too well known as a plumber, while Gwen is still a child. That is until Kevin sticks up for her, saying she's capable in a fight, and saved their lives countless times, having even helped stop a major catastrophe yesterday. Seeing the boy will not budge on this, the Petrosapien relents, seeing Ben, Gwen and Kevin all board his ship, while Max urges Tetrax to take care of his kids. As the ship then begins its liftoff sequence, Tetrax gives them the tour, explaining that its name is the Resolute, and that it's equipped with all manner of specialist equipment for his work as a bounty hunter, such as a hoverboard simulator with over 1,000 tracks, and an automated training room to keep his combat skills sharp. In spite of his bad mood, Kevin can't help but be a little interested in all this alien tech, though he doesn't really perk up until he sees the bridge, at which point his eyes go wide, and all Assemble can see is itching to take the ship for a test drive. Hoping to make the boy feel a little better, Tetrax offers to have his pilot Gluto show Kevin how to fly the Resolute, with this being where the group get introduced to a peach-colored blob of an alien. In his bratty way, Ben dismissively dubs him Living Snot, but Kevin and Gwen both quickly bond with the pilot, wanting to learn all there is about his profession, Gwen from a scientific standpoint, and Kevin because he wants to avoid crashing into the moon when he finally gets to drive. This gives Ben and Tetrax a chance to step away, as the bounty hunter wants to run some tests on the Omnitrix, since if he can find the creator's DNA signature, it will lead them right to Azimuth. Though Ben is a little hesitant, as the machine he's being put into was designed for someone with diamond hard skin rather than squishy pink flesh, he does not object, allowing Tetrax to make a scan of the Omnitrix, so he can break it down to its parts. At first, this turns up nothing, with it seeming like maybe Azimuth didn't leave a mark, though remembering when his dad got his mum an engraved watch, he suggests checking the back, with this hunch striking gold, as Tetrax is immediately able to find a traceable signature, though not to a place he would have expected, revealing Azimuth is an inmate of the Intergalactic Maximum Security Prison in Karsakon. Meanwhile, in a different corner of space, further from Earth, another ship picks up the Omnitrix's signal. However, this is no one so benign as Tetrax, as the captain of this craft is none other than Vilgax, having apparently survived his last clash with the Tennysons, and spent the ensuing weeks escaping the Null Void, since Levin's wretched grenade had forcibly teleported him into that vile pocket dimension. However, now he is back, and more than willing to eliminate Ben Tennyson and his friends, and if this news is to be believed that he is leaving Earth, all the better, as that means the brat will be stepping out of his own domain and into the galactic tyrants. In his low, raspy voice, Vilgax then commands his bioid crew to chart a course for the Resolute, his clawed fist clenching and unclenching as he speaks. Soon he will have his revenge, and when he does, nothing will stop him from claiming the Omnitrix. Back with the heroes, after a long day of travel, the kids have been instructed to return to their quarters, as in a few hours they will reach Incarcicon, and when they do, Tetrax wants them well rested in case something goes wrong. As they are sharing a room, this is Ben's first chance to really get Kevin alone since the incident in the clothes store, and so a little tentatively asks his bud how he's holding up. While well-intentioned, this is perhaps the wrong move, as after working with Gluto, Kevin had finally been able to forget his troubles, only to be reminded, and so replies through gritted teeth that he's fine, while looking at his mismatched hands. Seeing that he's messed up, Ben tries to change tack, telling Kevin to look at it this way. This is a new transformation like the ones he gets from the watch. Though evidently annoyed by what he perceives as Ben making jokes about his situation, he snaps back that it's not the same at all. When Ben gets a new form, he becomes an awesome hero. When he gets one, he becomes a monster. Flaring up, Ben retorts that at least his powers are his own. Without the Omnitrix, what is he? Just an ordinary, normal, boring nobody. And that's assuming the watch doesn't just vaporize him in a few days. However, in his current mental state, Kevin is in no mood to be sympathetic, and so storms away, saying that he's going to go check out the hoverboard simulator, his implication clear that he wants to be left alone. As a result, it proves a rather sleepless night for both Ben and Kevin, so that when they do arrive at Incarcicon, both look rather exhausted. Nonetheless, they don't have time for a nap, and so form up on Tetrax as he explains the plan for this operation. First and foremost, it is imperative they keep a low profile, which means Gwen will have to wear a disguise, and Ben will have to transform, since as the kids learn to their great horror, humans are considered a delicacy in most parts of the galaxy. To this end, Ben turns into Wildvine, figuring no one likes to eat Brussels sprouts, so he'll be fine. Well, Kevin asks what about him? What should he do? Factually, Tetrax tells him to just rely on his mutation to keep him out of trouble, since from looking at him, no one would think he's a human, a comment which, while meant positively, only causes Kevin to slump his shoulders, as he agrees that yeah, the Petrosapien is right. Due to having passed themselves off as sanitation workers, the group land in the trash disposal bay, and ride a maintenance elevator up to the general population area, with this being where they begin their search. Unfortunately, having no idea what type of creature the creator is, their best bet is to split up and look for someone who either gives off an air of intelligence, or in Ben's case, recognizes the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. To this end, Tetrax goes one way, and Ben another, while Gwen and Kevin stick together, and it is good that they do, as due to her walking around in an oversized costume designed for a Petrosapien, Gwen is bound to step on some toes, quite literally, with it not taking long before an angry alien inmate decides to punish this slight by menacing the girl. Knowing she can't use magic in the suit for fear of damaging it, or revealing what she really is, Gwen begins to panic, though stepping forward, Kevin snarls the alien to back off, and while he intends to make a fist, his hand instead transforms into a sledgehammer, a far more intimidating prospect that forces the inmate to walk away. Smiling, Gwen thanks the young Osmosian for the help, with him grinning that it was nothing, since he's used to dealing with guys like that. Though Gwen is not done, as she next asks how he did that with his hand, which has since returned to its normal shape. Shrugging, Kevin replies that it was just kinda instinct. Maybe it's a result of his mutation. He doesn't know, though he's glad he's not completely useless now that he can't absorb stuff. Over with Tetrax, things are not going so well, as having recognized the other bounty hunter, 66, who is now an inmate, has started a brawl with his old rival, while Ben has spotted a familiar face too, Vilgax, recognizing the tentacles from beneath his cloak. Figuring that since this could be his last adventure, he might as well take out the worst bad guy in the galaxy while he still can, Ben quickly springs into action, forgetting subtlety and going on the attack. Using Wildvine's extendable limbs, he promptly swings over the crowd before dropping a number of his explosive pods down on Vilgax, though this proves largely ineffective, with the Squid Warrior abandoning their cloak to leap up and kick him in the stomach, while demanding to know what his problem is. At once, Ben is struck with two irrefutable facts. One, that this speaker is a woman, and two, she is not Vilgax despite sharing his species. He then hastily tries to explain his mistake, stating that he thought she was someone else, though it seems the Vilgax lookalike isn't interested in excuses, growling that much is obvious, before giving him another roundhouse kick for good measure that sees him skid across the floor, and worse, time out. Suddenly, the expression of everyone watching changes to that of unmistakable hunger, both at the thought of the Omnitrix, which up until now had been considered a myth, and because of actual hunger, since a delicious human has just dropped into their lap. Letting out a yell, Ben attempts to flee from the inmates so they converge on him, calling dibs on various body parts, though before he can get far, he feels a pair of hands grab him. Refusing to be some freaky alien's lunch, he tries desperately to break free. That is until the very familiar voice of Gwen speaks in his ear, telling the doofus to be quiet and play along. She then bends down under the guise of eating Ben so that he can crawl into the mouth of her costume, which thankfully is large enough to fit them both, while Kevin stands between the pair and the onrushing aliens, growling in his best tough guy voice that the human's been caught, so there's nothing to see here, his hands now resembling a sword and a hammer. Reluctantly, the inmates do begin to disperse when they see there's nothing left for them, with Gwen hissing at the boys they need to get back to Tetrax now, though before they can get far, the squid-faced woman Ben had been fighting approaches, whispering that their little act may have fooled all those other idiots, but it can't fool her, since she knows the Omnitrix fail-safes would have protected Ben from being eaten. In a suspicious tone, Kevin asks how she'd know that when even Ben didn't. Though being the smartest of the trio, Gwen groans that it's obvious. She must be Azimuth. Hearing this, Ben pleads for her to fix the Omnitrix, though the woman presumed to be Azimuth simply replies they'll need to get her out of here before she can do anything. Thanks to them not presently being in a massive battle like in canon, this is a surprisingly easy task, as when they reconvene with Tetrax, who was searching for 6-6 after he fled their fight, he simply drapes his cloak over her to hide her identity from security and fellow inmates. From there, it is a simple matter to stroll back into the maintenance elevator and head for their ship, with the sentry bots having no issue, as they saw 4 entities arrive, and now see 4 entities leaving, meaning no alarms are raised. As they board the Resolute once more, Ben takes a moment to thank Gwen and Kevin for saving his butt back there, while also taking a moment to apologize to Kevin, saying that he was a jerk for making light of his mutation, though Kevin replies he was kinda a jerk too, with them agreeing that they're both jerks, but that's what makes them such good friends, while Gwen just shakes her head, muttering that she'll never understand these two. Once they're all settled and the Resolute is back in space, quote-unquote Azimuth gets to work scanning the Omnitrix, and what she finds is not good. Specifically, that by transforming, Ben has sped up the countdown and will only speed it up further with each subsequent transformation. Additionally, she reveals that should the watch self-destruct, it will destroy not only Ben, but most if not all of the known universe. Eagerly, Ben asks if she can fix this, laying on the flattery about how she is the genius creator of the Omnitrix after all, though this just earns him a bemused look as she states that maybe Azimuth could, but she's not him. She's Myax, his long-suffering and undercredited assistant. At once, the heroes erupt in uproar, furious at this deceit, with Tetrax demanding to know why he shouldn't just stick Myax in a escape pod and shoot her back to Incarsicon. Though still in that flat tone, she reveals that while she may not be Azimuth, she is the only one who can lead them to him, making her indispensable. Meanwhile, back on the prison station, Vilgax has arrived, and since there was no breakout, meaning no escapees in space, the Tyrant has no choice but to make his way on board, smashing through the sentries who request authentication, and demanding any of the scum present to tell him what they know of the Omnitrix. Naturally, this is not taken well, with several of the prison's most notorious and violent inhabitants figuring that if they take out the feared warlord Vilgax, they'll earn some clout around here, if not an out-and-out pardon, with this seeing a group led by none other than Volcanus rush Vilgax, their weapons and claws raised. Though, in the face of this, the Tyrant simply looks annoyed, activating his arm rods and using his enhanced musculature to level a two-handed hammer blow, which strikes the ground and creates a shockwave strong enough to barrel all of his challengers off their feet. This showing of force is enough to scare the remaining inmates into submission, with them averting their eyes as Vilgax once more hisses that he wants to know where the Omnitrix is. Reluctantly, Volcanus protests that he's too late, and that Tennyson got eaten, watch and all, though before Vilgax can crush the life out of him for suggesting such a thing, a new voice speaks up, that of 6-6, as he retorts that he saw the whole thing, and it was clearly a ruse, before adding that if the Tyrant is going after Tennyson, and by extension Tetrax Shard, he will happily offer his services. This sends a rumbling through the entire prison, as the thought of leaving appeals to all of them, with a cry soon going up as the assortment of criminals pledge their allegiance to Vilgax. When this has grown to a fever pitch, Vilgax speaks again, silencing them all with a low, sinister hiss, as he declares that he will grant them their freedom in exchange for the Omnitrix, an offer no one refuses, so that when the Chimeran warlord departs a few minutes later to resume his hunt, it is with an army at his back, made up of the worst the galaxy has to offer. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.